Hey everyone, it's been 2 days since I did the How to Start Your Podcast webinar. Already, some of you are starting to create your episodes, your podcasts, your names, and it's really exciting to see that process for you. So, today I leave you the recording here on YouTube. And if you're watching this right now, I encourage you to take action quick and to not overcomplicate things for yourself. If you like this webinar, please share this with a friend. It's a free webinar to start your own podcast. It has every step you need with examples to start your own podcast and launch it in less than 24 hours. So don't let this pass by. Start today. Don't look back. You're gonna thank me later. See you there. And today, what I really want to do is help you build your podcast better than mine. Forget about that. I have a podcast. I want you to have a podcast, to have a successful podcast. And I'm going to help you step by step to planning your podcast, creating your logo, launching your first episode, creating your RSS feed, and uploading it to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, every podcast platform that you may want or need to be in order to deliver your message, right? So the first step that we got to take is obviously planning your podcast, right? So there are two big questions you need to ask yourself here, and they're joined at the hip. So first one is, what's your podcast for? My podcast is about personal development to help other young generations. Even though I have audience up to 65 years old, it is designed for millennials that want to better themselves. It's about personal development. So that's why my podcast is for. So firstly, why do you want to make a podcast? I wanted to influence others into building themselves, right? You see, this you go designing these questions, asking what for, why, who, right? So when you're doing a podcast, you have a lot of ways to do this. Podcasting today is like radio was 50, 70 years ago. This is something very big. Big corporations, big businesses are using podcasts now, not only as main revenue sources, but as big lead generators. So if you're in any type of business, network marketing, any type of business, a podcast can help you build your audience, build your tribe, and actually build your whole successful business. So, do you want to do it by yourself as a freelancer, as a business for your company? Do you want it to do it for marketing purposes? Have you identified who do you want to direct your podcast to? Right? Your dream customer, your ideal client. So, podcasting, you have to know this because it's a very big um it's a very big thing right now. So it is a great way to build authority because you are talking on a topic and you're placing yourself as the person of knowledge, as the go-to person, right? And you are providing your customers and your target audience, remember, because this is way bigger than you just talking on a microphone, with valuable and entertaining content, because it can go any way and you can do a podcast however you like it. That's the best part about it. And your face doesn't show. You're seeing my face now because this is a training, right? And I want you to have that interaction with me. And by the way, feel free to ask me any question you might have around the topic. Stop me, say, hey Luis, I have a question, right? Because I want you to get the full value out of this training today. So, why are you here? That's the important thing to keep in mind right now. Why do you want to open a podcast? Because that will keep you motivated in the whole process. Okay? So, Number two is, who is your podcast for? I already asked you this question, but even though it's the first time you're seeing me, we're going deep because I want you to start your own podcast tomorrow. You can do it, but we gotta ask the important questions here. So get the big question: who are you making the podcast for? The thing is, unless you know exactly who you're making your show for and why you're doing it, you've got no chance of growing an audience. And I don't want you to be making episodes, 100 episodes, 200 episodes, and nobody listening to it. Nobody giving you feedback. You not having an impact on your time, because it's your time that you're pouring into this. This is my time that I'm gifting to you guys in order to help you grow and succeed in this podcasting adventure that you were embarking on, right? So if you're coming at it from a business point of view, and you are, for example, a personal trainer who wants to make a health and fitness podcast, then your target audience, who do you think might be? People who go to the fucking gym. Of course. You want people who are going to the gym or people who are fat. One or two. And you got to target your topics to those people. You want people listening to you. Remember, you are placing yourself here as the authority. Trust me. Trust me by experience. When you say to someone, hey, listen to my podcast on Apple Podcasts, they're like, you have a podcast on Apple? You are an authority. You become an authority like that. And then people start listening to you. So what they're listening to has to resonate with them. And if it does, you hook them in. That's why knowing your target audience is so important. So if you're creating a hobby show, let's say it's based around your love of zombies and The Walking Dead, post-apocalyptic fiction. I don't know, right? Then your target audience would simply be folks with the same passion. Look for people who like The Walking Dead, Generation C, all those freaky shows. You can literally do a podcast about anything. This is the best part. Podcasts are as diverse as people are. So don't think that your podcast topic is stupid. It's not. Everything is worth it nowadays because people are fucking crazy. They're gonna listen to anything. They want to be entertained. They want to be out of their world. And if you can be the person who provides that, you got something big, bro. So a lot of smart people talk about creating listener personas or avatars, right? It's literally you saying, okay, Sally is a mother of three. She goes to the gym on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays because the other days she's with her husband who's an alcoholic, and she likes getting out of that house and not thinking about the shit that's happening in her house. When she's alone, she likes listen to personal development and she likes jazz because it calms her down. So you create this persona that is your target audience, the person that you're talking to. Because when you're doing a podcast, there's not a lot of feedback. Yeah, you see the 5-star ratings are coming here and there, but at the end of the day, you're here. You're with a mic speaking, right? So you gotta always remind yourself who you're doing this for. And having that target avatar, that persona, can really help in that process of getting your mind in the place of who you're talking to, right? So that persona is something to keep in mind every time you plan an episode. Would John, our listener persona, like this? Is this focus on what he likes, what he's interested in? Because remember, you got to do it for him. He's the one listening to you. Instagram is not, for example, Instagram is about you. Oh, look at me. I'm happy. I'm in the Bahamas. But a podcast is about bringing value, right? Remember, you got to bring value to others. What would he want? How could I serve him? Just remember, this is a business. You guys are just embarking on an iceberg. You're seeing the point, the little tip, but this is way bigger. This is not only a huge business builder, but this is a huge revenue too. When you get those listeners, when you start getting that traction, trust me, it'll all start going the right way. Now, how much time will that take? It all depends on you, on how good you know your persona, on how good you know why you're doing this. And if you keep reminding this to yourself, trust me, you'll be successful. We're in the 2020. People just want to listen to something, they want to disconnect. So it's not that hard. You need to give people a reason to listen. Wow, what happened to my English? You need to give people a reason to listen. Listen. Thank you. This means creating content that they will get something out of when they hit play. My podcasts are about personal development, right? So I like to throw things that, number one, inspires them, number two, motivates them, and number three, they can act on. Because when they're out of my podcast, I want them to be able to do something. I don't want them to just listen to me for 40 minutes, an hour 30, and then just be like, oh, yeah, that was a good podcast. Bye. No, 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 no. I want them to act on something. So keep that in mind. Get them to have something. Give them a task, something that they can take you out of their phones and into their personal lives. You want them to stay connected to you. And we'll talk about that just shortly. But first up, here's some resources for you to bookmark for your future reading. And I'm going to send you this page. I'm reading a PDF. I'm going to send you this so you can have those resources too. That it's about creating your ideal podcast persona and creating a value proposition for your podcast, because it's all about the value here, and choosing the topic that's unique and original, because it's all about how you see yourself. How you see yourself is how other people see yourself. Now, some of you that are totally new to this of having a podcast or a YouTube channel, anything related to that, to creating content, maybe asking yourself, do I need to have an audience to start a podcast? The answer to that is no. It's a good question. It's a good question, and we need to get it out of the way. Some people already have a bit of an audience because they're musicians, they're on Instagram, social media, wherever it may be. But if you don't, it's okay. You don't need an audience. If you already have an audience built around something other than your podcast, then it's a good opportunity for laying the foundations of the show's fan base, right? Your tribe. That's what you want. You want a tribe in your show. This assumes, of course, that your podcast is relevant to that audience. So maybe you have a clothing brand, right? And now you want to start a podcast about cars. Maybe they're not going to mix. And it's okay. It's okay. So during the planning stages, you may opting to survey your audience, right? Here you can ask them on other platforms, right? What's your biggest pain point? What are you struggling with right now? Right? Like, what would you like to listen to? What advice would you like someone to give you? Things like that, just to check where the people are that are following you are standing at. So you want to remember, you want to help them in whatever they may need through your episodes. Because here's what's going to happen. And this happens to me a lot. A lot of times, since my audience is young millennials like me, right? Young people 20 to 30 years old, I know that the struggles I have are very similar to the struggles they have. So I'm actually my avatar persona. So a lot of times when I do my podcast, I'm giving motivation, inspiration to me listen to it after. And then a lot of people come and say like, yo, I feel like you were talking to me. It's like if you know me, like you're in my head, and like,
I really was just talking to myself. I don't know what you're talking about, but that happens. That happens when you have your avatar really focused in and you know what those pain points are. So you want to speak to those pain points. It's like if you scrape your knee and then you go and scrape it more. That's what you want to do with them. But instead of scraping it, you want to gently tap on it so they feel the healing when they're on your show. And it's gonna happen. Trust me, it's gonna happen. If you do this right, the things that you're gonna be talking about are gonna actually help them. And you're going to start seeing that impact, feeling that impact when people start emailing you, texting you like, oh, thank you for doing this, thank you for that. You don't know how really you saved my life. I was gonna commit suicide. All crazy shit happens when you start this journey. I'm telling you, this is way bigger. This is way bigger than you think. So you might even choose to find out a little bit more about them. This could be anything from demographics and location to what other podcasts, if any, they enjoy listening to, right? I like the Joe Rogan Experience. I don't know if you know what that podcast is, but I like that format. So I I I tend to look at what audience he has and create content based on that type of audience. Not exactly because we're not the same podcast, but I take a hint, right? Where are these people coming from? What do they do outside of his podcast, you know? And you really go deep on the people that you are talking to because you want to know that. You want to know what they're doing. So just don't let this become a source of procrastination, right? Or designed by committee. Sooner or later, preferably sooner, you should start to make some decisions and move forward. You know, this is the part of this training where I'm talking to me, right? Because I'm already doing this, and building a podcast is like building any other business. You have to adapt, improve, and keep on grinding. Okay, this episode didn't get as many listens, didn't get as many downloads as I wanted. So what went wrong, right? And you gotta ask yourself those questions. How it's not that something went wrong, is what could I have done better, right? Because when you start a business, you have no clients. When you start a podcast, you have no listeners, and that's just part of the process. But with you making the content that you like and that is serving other people, you're going to start seeing those numbers climb up. So if you have no audience, welcome to the vast majority of people who start a podcast. Most likely, you won't have an audience. That's totally okay. It's okay. So, of all the things that might put you off launching your own show, please don't let this be the one. Please don't let this be the one who stops you from building your show. Most podcasters skip things off by talking into the void. I still feel like I'm talking into the void. Why? Because you're not getting that feedback. But follow the steps in this guide. Trust me, I'm going to send you this same guide that I'm reading. I got this out of Google, but I found it so good. I'm giving it to you. My friend, Google has everything you need. Literally everything you need. And I'm going to give you some extra resources. So be sure to have your email on my sign up page so I can email you all of this. So, um data has shown that potential new listeners don't care if they've never heard about you. It's not like YouTube that they want you to have 1 million subscribers. On podcasts, they're not seeing you. They don't know who you are. They're just listening to your voice and the words you're saying. Most of people listening to podcasts on their commute to work, on grocery trips, on the gym. So they don't care. They're just literally listening to something, and if it's good, they're gonna hit that follow. They're gonna search you up again. Because on podcasts, they show you what you recently listened to, right? So you can go and hit another episode. Most of the platforms on podcasts, they autoplay the episodes. So you listen to this one, you finished it, it goes directly to the next one. So you want to have a lot of content available because people are gonna binge watch you, binge listen to you, right? So step number 3, give them a reason to listen. When you're providing information to someone that will help someone either lose weight or doing a really entertaining interview or talking about your favorite authors, discussing a book, anything goes. Talking about a training that you had. Not only have you given them a reason to listen, but you've given them a reason to come back for more. That's what you really want. You want them to say, hey, tomorrow again, when I'm at work, I'm going to put this dude on. I don't know who the fuck he is, but he gave me some good content. It's important to think about the planning stages, right? Can you write down 10, 15 potential episodes, just the titles? I'll give you a hint, an insider. I only write the title for my podcast. I don't write anything else. If you want to listen to one of my episodes after this, you can. All of my podcasts, I just put wow, let me see. Round and round in the world I go. And then I start. I let whatever is in my subconscious go. Because podcasts are more like a conversation than a video. Maybe on a video, you need to have something scripted. You need to follow through a very specific process. Not a podcast. In a podcast, you can be just yourself. You can flow. My style, personally, I don't even like editing my podcast that hard. And we'll talk more about this a little bit further. But with podcasts, you can be very natural. You can just be you and talk whatever's on your mind, whatever you're feeling, right? So, did you know that your podcast description, also known as the summary, is the most important part of your potential new listeners to see? Because before they listen to an episode, they're going to go to that description. That's like YouTube. So, you want to have that good description. Once you have that title, you finish the episode. In this episode, we talked about how to build your own podcast, and we gave 20 steps to freedom and to start your own podcast tomorrow. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, 20 steps to start my podcast tomorrow. Here's what's going to happen. Some people are going to say, whoa, that's too much steps. Some people are going to say, finally, someone that gave me what I wanted. You're going to go right in. Goes both ways. Both ways. Always goes both ways. So, step number 4. And by the way, there are some additional resources on how to write the perfect summary, podcast launch course, podcast host academy. This is all by the people who I took this page from, the steps from. So if you want to join that, you can go. I'm not gonna upsell you anything. I don't have anything to sell right now, so don't feel sold by me, okay? So name your podcast. There's 3 main camps when it goes to naming your show. Number 1, the clever name. You might think of a really clever name for your show, but remember that people need to be able to find it when they're searching for information about your topic. If you have a clever, catchy name for your show, then try to also incorporate a description onto the title. There's no point putting out great content if anybody can find it. Like the Great Alibaba Hamarakasan show. Who the fuck is gonna find that? And you're talking about sports. No, like make your name coherent to what you're going to be talking about. If you're going to do interviews with Danny, development with Danny, who I don't know, something that goes hand in hand with the topic that you were talking about, right? By the way, is everyone going good? Any questions? Any doubts? Any whoa, this dude is going really fast? Please let me know. I can slow down. I can, if everybody's good, type a 111 in the chat and we can go on. Ah. So, um, for example, if a show is called The Path of Most Resistance, then it probably falls into the clever name category, right? Category. Even though it's not that clever, so to give it a little bit of description, we also use the tagline, the uncommon leader's guide. So you may have a podcast with your tagline that gives you context of the thing that you are talking on your podcast. By the way, family, this Zoom is not free. This is the free version of Zoom. So in 6 minutes, I'm going to have to say, whoa, mama huevo. I'm going to have to take this down and then do it again. Because Zoom is gonna kick us out. So the descriptive name, it's gonna be searchable. You gotta have something that is not boring, because it might be boring, but try to not make it so boring. So the choice to simply call your show that your target audience are searching for. If you have a show about mechanics, the mechanics guide to building an engine. And you just talk about building engines on your podcast. Right? If our personal trainer call her show the Fitness Podcast, it's a great name for fitness enthusiasts that are looking for fitness podcasts, right? Or the third option of naming your podcast is using your own name. There's pretty much a no, unless you've already got an audience. For example, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a big persona. He has a big personality outside of podcasting. So his show is named The Joe Rogan Experience. For somebody like us that are just starting out, that have no audience or a bit of small one, then maybe you don't want to name your podcast the Sebastian Podcast, you know? You want to name it something that's searchable, that's not connected to you. Then at the start of every podcast, you can say the Sebastian Show, but it's not your podcast name, no? So if someone started the Mike Smith Show and it was about rock climbing, do you think people would find it? Do you think people would say, who is Mike Smith? Who is this dude? And move on to the next podcast because nobody knows who he is. But you may name it Rock Climbing with Mike. They don't know who Mike is, but they know it's about rock climbing, right? So name your podcast. Important, not the most important step. Don't get a headache thinking about what name to put on your podcast. It's not that important, right? You can, be creative with it, have fun. Don't get stuck on it. So that was the first section, right? Which was planning your podcast. Now we're going to planning your episodes. Now we have the foundation of the podcast, right? We created it. We have something established. Now we want to start with the episodes. Now, let's take the small break, a 1-2 minute break, so we can start this back up because Zoom is going to kick us out. And let's dig in to planning your episodes, how long they should be, how to edit them, what software you can use to edit them, what equipment you may need, right? And all that good stuff. Part B, planning your episodes. We already talked about laying the foundation of your podcast, the things that you need to get your name ready, right? And to find your target audience, your persona. So now, after establishing what type of content you like to be putting out in your podcast, it's time to think about the episodes themselves. So, when looking at how to start a podcast, what are some of the most common questions about your podcast episode? How long should a podcast episode be? Right? Podcast length depends solely on content. Don't cut down good content or pad out sucky one, right? How long does it need to be to get the message out? If you only need 10 minutes, then you only need 10 minutes. If you need 2 hours, then you need 2 hours, right? This is the good thing about podcasts. You have no time limit. You have no time frame. As long as you can keep the topic going, you can keep going too, right? There's no there's no limit, right? Because if you ask most podcast listeners, a short episode would probably be anything under 50 minutes, and a long episode would probably be anything over an hour. So many will reference the time of the average commute. A lot of people listen to podcasts on their cars. Where the fuck do I have my mouse? Yeah, a lot of people listening to podcasts on the cars. So anything between 20 to 45 minutes seems to be the sweet spot for episodes, right? If it's anything beyond 45 minutes, then it's gonna probably be for people listening at home or they're gonna finish it later. But you're gonna see your statistics on that 20 to 45-minute mark. That's gonna be the sweet spot. So don't worry much about these figures though, because ultimately your episode lengths should be decided by two things: your content and your audience. Alexa, mi amor, baja eso un poquito. So I'm gonna put a fraction of a podcast episode that I have. So let me share my screen actually, so you can see how I do it and you can get an example, right? So let me share my screen right now. Where do I share the screen? Okay, here. Podcast. Okay. So this is my podcast on Apple Podcast. Um let's put this one. Right.
Welcome to El Círculo de Vida
20 minutes.
podcast. Today I'm gonna be talking about my story and the power of self-talk. So,
So let's digest this a little bit. The first thing I said was the name of the podcast. The second thing I said was what I'm going to be talking about, right? My mentor always says, tell them what you're going to tell them. Tell them what you told them, right? Because when you tell them what you're going to tell them, you go hook them in. They want to listen to what is this guy talking about? Let me listen to it, right? So you hook them in. Let's take a little bit forward.
Now, you may try and say to yourself, I am enough. I am rich. I am abundant. I am successful. But are you really? Are you abundant? Are you successful? Are you enough? Are you pretty? That's what your subconscious is doing.
So when you're filming, it's important to always remember You are talking to someone. So talk to someone, right? Remember that because you want them to feel like what you're saying is for them. Even though, again, this podcast specifically has been one of the most that has gotten most feedback for me, right? I was doing it totally based on myself. But I was talking like, are you? Do you feel successful? Because they start questioning themselves. If I'm talking about fitness, are you really fit? Are you really giving everything that you can give? Do you really feel good with the results that you've been getting in the gym? Right? You want them to feel that connection. Now let's skip it to the end. We're 6 minutes in. Remember, this is a commute to work. This has been part of the reason why this podcast has been so positive, right? And the feedback that I've gotten. 20 minutes. Everybody has free 20 minutes in a day. If you're just starting out, it's good to make them short like this so you can get used to filming, right? So let's skip it to the end. Who's gonna like this? Oh, true. And I'm reading from my notes here. I got my journal here. And this is, I hope you guys are understanding where I'm coming from. What's some of the self talk that's not serving you right now? Some of mine, I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I don't know how to do it. I'm not good enough. I don't know enough. I'm a bad planner. I'm not sure. So, something that I like to do when I'm filming my podcast episodes is taking me into the equation, like I'm just doing in this training. You see, I pull up my experience so you can see that I'm a human too, right? That I have flaws and that I'm doing this process because I believe in leading by example, right? I'm gonna do it, then I'm gonna tell you how I did it because that's the only thing I can talk about. I cannot talk about how Sean did it because I don't know how he did it. I know how I did it. I know how I'm doing it. So from time to time, mix it. This is my advice. You don't have to do it, but I like getting myself a little bit into the mix because as you being the podcast host, that's you placing yourself as the authority in the topic, right? And they're not seeing you. They're not seeing you. So for all they know, you're an 80-year-old, and you're like, wow, this dude is so wise, man. Like he has so much value to give. This girl just has the greatest content I've ever heard of. When you place yourself as that, right? You gotta place yourself. Now let's skip it right to the end so you can see how a podcast ends. And look at the time frame. 111. Wow. What you bear, but how you bear it, right? So are you willing to become aware of your self-talk? Working on your self-talk is a lifetime process. Until you die, you're gonna have self-talk. But you should know that we can direct our footsteps of our success and build some vision and mission statements that move us into the correct action needed for our success. The whole future lies in certainty. Live immediately. Hmm. It's a phrase by Seneca. Your self talk will determine your success or your failure. I'll leave you with that. See you at the next adventure. So in this episode, I didn't end it with like a subscribe, blah blah blah, and all that. but I'm going to show you one that does. But this is another technique that I use. I leave them wanting more. Like when you see a movie in the theaters, you're like, was that it? So you go directly to the next one. Let's look at
You
this
gotta
one.
treat yourself like maybe not a grind because no, no, yet of not only so family. That's all for today. Yeah. So family. That's all for today. I love you. I'll probably and I'll do another podcast tomorrow. I'm gonna upload this one today, so you can just come back tomorrow, and we'll be here again because growth is on a daily basis. It's not today and a year later. It's on a daily basis, and I want to be on that process with you guys. I want to be accountable for myself and help you be accountable for yourself too. And I'm not alone. That's all I can say. I love you. I'll see you when. Bye, y'all. I love you. Oh, if you liked this podcast, don't forget to leave a like, leave a comment, and share this podcast so other people know that we are sharing value on this podcast. I'll see you where.
And be aware of our stomachs that are also out that.
So I'm done with this. Let me stop the share. So as you heard, give them somewhere to go after they're finished consuming your episodes. Give them something to do. If it's leave a like, share with a friend, go to a summit I did, go to my YouTube channel if you want to see the visual experience of this episode. I always record my episodes here on Zoom, or I either take out my camera and record it while I'm recording the podcast. So you can also see me, right? But you want them to go somewhere else. Now, on those two episodes, there were a key difference between them. Um, One was 20 minutes, the other was 1 hour 20, right? So not every episode obviously is gonna be the same. You're gonna have some long format ones and some short format ones. It's totally okay, and it's actually good because you never know what type of people are listening to you. So the time frame that your episode should have depends solely on your content and on your audience. If you have 50 minutes of valuable, relevant content, why chop it down to 20 minutes? Or likewise, you've said everything you have to say in 10 minutes, then that's it. Why pad it to 50 minutes? Why pad it to 30 minutes if your punchline was in the first 10? In extreme cases, say you do an interview and it's a fantastic conversation from start to finish, but runs for 2 hours. You can always chop it in half and create two episodes. It's totally okay. Because you want people to listen to your episode. Like, not a lot of people are going to listen to a 2 hour episode unless you have like a superstar that already has a very strong fan base. Then yeah, those people are going to listen to it. But again, it's all depending on the people who are listening to you. Now, over time, remember, this is a process. The most important episode is the next one. If you already did 6 episodes, fuck them. Time for the next one, right? Over time, your listeners will tell you if they think your episodes are too short or too long. Survey your audience. Ask them, hey, how do you like your episodes? Leave it in a comment. What do you like them short? Do you like them long? What do you like us talking about? What was your favorite topic from our episodes? This is all things you can ask your audience. Remember, you're always talking to someone. It may feel like you're talking to yourself or to your guest, but you're talking to thousands of people. Trust me on that. So when you get your data, there's no need to stick to the same length each episode, each time. That's why I range. Some topics, I'm done in 20 minutes. Some conversations take me an hour, and that's okay. That's all going to be depending on what you're talking about. So the length of your podcast is a unique factor. Another thing to not stress about it. Creating your podcast, I want you to flow like water. Don't stress yourself out. Don't think about it too much. Just do it. Like Nike says, trust me. When I was starting this process, I got a little bit overwhelmed because I didn't know anybody who did podcasts. I was the first one of my friends, of the people who I knew. So I had to figure all of this out on my own. By trial and error, I had to go and make an episode, say, okay, I don't like this. This doesn't sound good. I talked too much shit on this episode, and improving step by step, then you go bettering yourself. Now, you don't have to go through the same mistakes that I did because now you have me, you have access to me, right? And if you're inside of my community, El Círculo de Vida on WhatsApp, that's even better because you literally have direct access to my phone. So remember, ask. Don't ask and it is given, you know? Don't stress, don't overwhelm yourself because it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You're gonna make it easier for yourself. So next question that you may be asking yourself is how often should I release an episode? Again, this is a totally unique to the person. If you only have time for one episode a month, then go for that one episode a month. If you can do two episodes a month, that's even better. If you can do one episode weekly, that's great. It's all going to be so dependent on number one, how fast do you want to grow this podcast? Number two, how much can you talk about your topic? I I can talk a lot about it because I have a lot of books, right? So your episodes, you should release them as frequently as you can. That's the target. You know, that's what you want. Don't stress again, again, don't stress yourself out if you can't do an episode today. It's not worth it. Just do it tomorrow, but do an episode. Just keep yourself on doing the episodes because this is a process. Trust me, this is a process. Take it easy on yourself. Don't stress yourself out too much because this is something you're gonna like doing, you know? There's something that you're doing because you genuinely like doing this. Yeah, this is a huge business, but at first, it starts as a passion, right? I do this because I like doing this. This is why this is a free training. This is a free webinar. I'm taking 1 hour, 2 hours of my day just to help you out because I like it. I could definitely charge you for this. And the next time I probably will because this was my first time doing a webinar about doing your own podcast. After I see the results that you guys are going to get about building your own podcast, guess what? I'm going to have reviews. I'm going to have a client base now. I'm going to be able to say, oh, I help these people do this. This is the results they got. Look at their podcast. Listen to them. Right? This is what happens when you start the process. So always remember, take it easy. There's no rush. Just take it easy. Do the next one. Do the next one. And do the next one. The most important one is the next one. So do as much as you can manage. You can still have a big impact with a monthly show. But people plan their lives around what day of the week it is. So have that in mind. It's the routine at the forefront of our lives, and tapping into it can be powerful. So let's say you tell your audience every Monday, I am dropping an episode. Then drop an episode every Monday. Make yourself part of their lives, make yourself part of their programming. That's what you want. Remember, that is what you are looking for. Remember that. So, that said, sticking to a deadline just for the sake of its pointlessness, you have a bigger impact. If you put out one excellent episode a month instead of a very average episode every week, what do you think is going to be better? One excellent episode. It's always better to have quality over quantity. Remember that. If you don't have an editor, a producer, make one episode a week. Take your time, edit that episode good, plan it out good. Okay, I'm gonna start talking about this. I'm gonna end it like this. I'm going to say my name. podcast episode what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to tell them what I'm going to tell them. And then at the end, I'm going to tell them what I told them. I'm going to end it off by saying if you like this podcast, leave a 5-star rating and do not forget to share with a friend so other people know that we are sharing value on this podcast. After that, I'm going to end it and I'm going to say, I love you all. See you on the next episode, right? You make sure that you have something of quality, that you have something that people say, okay, yeah, this is not a rookie. Even though it's your first episode. I'm going to tell you something. My first episode is my best episode. And it's actually also my worst episode because I already did it. Now I need another episode. Having kids, man. So, another option that you may have if you just want this as a Alexa, mami, ahorita, ahorita. Another option you have is podcasting in seasons, right? Maybe you have a podcast about pumpkin spice latte. Then your season is October. It's Halloween, right? When pumpkins are good. That's something you can do. So there's no right or wrong way to do a podcast. There really is not. It's like Christmas tree only come out in December and November, and people still use them, right? It's the same with your podcast. If you only do episodes on December and people know that you only do episodes on December, then they're gonna tune in every December. But you gotta get them used to knowing what you do, right? So step number 7 should be choosing good episode titles. Just like choosing a name for your podcast, choosing good, searchable, descriptive titles for your episodes is important. The biggest mistake when it comes to name your episodes is to call them episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, and so on. Nobody's going to know what the fuck you're talking about. You're going to be like, episode 1, yeah, a lot of value here. Wow. No, no, no. Fuck no. How to start your podcast. How to get rid of fear. How to be more positive. Creating a better version of yourself. Interviewing a world-class champion. Let people know what you are talking about on your episode. Make it clear from the get-go. What are they going to listen to? They're not going to listen to a shitty named episode. They're just not. It doesn't interest in them. Remember, there's no actual visuals on a podcast. So you need to have a good episode, good description, because that's when I'm gonna reel them in. When you have that in, you got them inside. You want them to hit that play button, right? So choosing a podcast format. Oh, wait. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can do a podcast solo, a group, a roundtable, which is literally a roundtable, one host, several guests, drama, co-host, and it's gonna influence the episode, right? Because if you have a roundtable about drama, you're gonna be like roundtable drama with the squad, and then you're gonna create that vibe between what you're doing. Now, there's a couple of resources that you can use here to get good episodes name. Again, make sure I have your email so I can send this to you. Now, choosing a podcast format. As you heard, the format you choose is really personal. Mine, it starts off with, hey, welcome to El Circo La Vida. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so happy to be here on a new episode today with you guys. And today, we're going to be talking about building your own podcast. Now, if you like this episode, please do not forget to like, share, comment, and leave a 5-star rating. That's my format. High energy. Tell them what you're gonna tell them. Tell them the name of the podcast. Go straight to what you're gonna tell them. Right now, am I always like this? Fuck no. Do you think I have unlimited energy? No. But on my podcast, that's the that's what I'm giving them because I'm talking about personal development. I'm talking about motivation, right? So I want them to feel that energy coming from me. So um the format of your episode will be depend on who's involved. If it's just you and you're not doing a co-host show anytime soon, for example, the thing it's similar here to your podcast length. Well, it's good to have an average format so your listeners know what to expect. You don't need to stick to it every time, right? If I have listeners, if I have a guest with me, then I'm gonna do a different format. Maybe it's gonna be an interview instead of me just giving some advice, giving some tips, talking about a specific topic. When I'm with a person, when I'm with a guest, it's a conversation. When I'm with myself, it's more like motivation, tips, tricks, what you can do, right? So it's all very dependent. It's all very dependent on what you're doing, right? So you might be comfortable with a certain format and settle into a groove, or you might prefer a mixed bag approach. It's totally up to you, right? It's totally up to you how you are going to run your show. Again, don't stress yourself out. Don't stress yourself out on, wow, does this look good? Does this sound good? Just make the episode, publish it, listen to it better on the next one. Don't ever delete an episode. Trust me. Don't ever delete an episode because that's how you are going to better each time. If you didn't like this one, it's okay. Let's better on the next one. What did I not like on this episode? Right? So there's a couple of formats that you can do this podcast thing. You can do the solo show, and there's benefits and there are challenges to it. So benefits, obviously, you don't need to rely on anyone. It's just you talking about whatever you may like, whatever you may want, right? And you're building a reputation as the authority on your subject. That is very positive and it's powerful too, because you are literally placing yourself as the person to go to. Now, challenge, con, perhaps the most intimidating style for show for the beginner podcast because you're on your own. If you fuck up, then you fucked up. It goes on you. Now, you can do the co-host show. The benefits is that you have a different interaction, right? It's like we rely on each other. It's a teamwork. We can vibe together. We can groove. We can get to know each other as as how we're going to run this. Plus, it's two different personalities, so people can have that contrast between, oh, I resemble myself better with her. I resemble myself better with them, and they keep back going because there's a difference in personalities there, and that's actually enticing to some people. Now, challenges. Not only do you need to set aside time to record, coordinate yourself with the other person, but that time must also, Alexa, mi amor, apágame eso de ahí. Kids, wow. So there's also the question of ownership, right? If you're doing a co-host show, who is this podcast? Like, who is the owner of this podcast? If we're two people doing it, right? It's the typical thing of being in a relationship, right? Now, other formats that you can do it is a round table where it's literally a round table. There's one host and a lot of co-hosts or guests or whatever you may want. A documentary where it's like you um walking through a range of interviews, conversations, and on location shit. You may be discussing a movie, and you're like, "Wow, I remember this part of the movie was very interesting because I liked how the actor interpreted that." you know, it's like you talking about something else in a documentary type of way. And there's docudrama, which is like it's like a new thing that they're doing, which is basically like a novel in a podcast. Like they used to, podcasts are not new. This is a radio show. So like how they used to do it before, that they like literally had a drama show on the podcast. That is something you can do, a scripted audio, it's called, right? You can do entertaining shit. Now, part C. Wow, this has been longer than I thought, but trust me that after this, you are going to have your podcast ready to go and run. So, recording your podcast, this is one of the most important parts. And now that we've done the groundwork, planned out your shows, got your name, it's time to get into recording your first episode. This is a process you can do in a single day. I am breaking it into a lot of steps so you know and you cannot get confused on what you need to do, right? It's easy to follow. I literally did this in a whole hour. I created the name, put the logo, published it, submitted it for reviews on Apple Podcasts everywhere. It was done. In a day, I had my podcast running. So don't get overwhelmed. I'm going to help you guys out with this process. Trust me on that. So, recording equipment that you may need. The minimum that you need to record a podcast is a computer. You don't need a microphone, but if you have one, it's way better. Because remember, they are listening to you. So you want a good audio quality. This microphone I got right here, let me turn off the green screen so you can see it right. This microphone, it's a Samsung. I bought it in B&H Photo Video. I will send it to you on my Círculo de Vida group chat. It was $60. You guys tell me how it sounds. So I'm not on that side, but I think it sounds passable. It's acceptable. It's not a bad audio quality. So a good microphone will take you a long way, because that's how your podcast is going to be positioned. Like, oh, it has good audio quality. It has professional studio quality. Now, a simple USB microphone setup can give great results if you choose the right microphone. Plus, you are much better to get started and see whether you enjoy it before forking out big sums of money on audio equipment. This is the Samsung Q2U. This is the top starting out podcaster microphone because it's cheap. It's really the cheapest microphone you can find that has a good audio quality. It's $60. Where's the caja? Look. It's $60. It has its own tripod, and you can put microphones, everything. It's a good microphone. It's cheap. I recommend you to buy this mic. If you can't, it's totally okay. But remember, your audio quality does influence a lot the perception of your show. So, you can also get a boom arm for that mic. I don't have it because I don't need it, but there's options, right? So, um, keep things simple. Don't have a lot of shit on your podcast while you're starting out. While you're going and you start getting some revenue out of your podcast, then yeah, you can start reinvesting some of that money into your equipment. But again, don't stress yourself out. Now this call is gonna end in less than a minute. Fuck Zoom. But let's take it down and let's get back up so I can give you a couple more tools that you can use to record your episodes. Okay. See you in 1 minute, fam. Same link again. Okay, we're back. We're back. We're back. Zoom keeps taking this call down, but there's a benefit to keeping things simple, and is that it's very easy to record. When it's time to record, you don't want to have a lot of equipment. You don't want to have a lot of prepping. You just want to get your mic out, get your software running. Let's get it, right? So that means that you'll able to keep your show regular in the early days and really give yourself a chance to build a loyal following. Again, to build a loyal following, deliver value, have good audio quality, be consistent with your episodes. If you're going to upload Mondays, then upload Mondays. A problem that I have not been consistent with my uploads. That has affected me a little bit, but since I have a following on social media, every time I drop an episode, I just promote it on my social media and I get the listeners in. But if you don't have that, then really be consistent with your episodes because you want people knowing that you're doing this every time at this day. So if you're planning to do a lot of in-person interviews, the Rode Smart Lav Plus is a great tool. That's another microphone. But again, buy this microphone. It's cheap, it's reliable, it's good audio quality. So yeah, you can buy two if you're going to do episodes because you really want to have the quality, right? So it's called Samsung Q2U. Samsung Q2U. I, it went flying. I'm going to drop the link on my Círculo de Vida chat. So don't worry. I'm going to drop the link there. So you guys can go and directly buy it. Now, recording and editing software. I used to do my podcast here on Zoom because I like having that live audience. But Zoom fucks up the audio quality. So use another software to record your episodes, right? So I use Audacity. Audacity is a free program. It's easy to use. Just download it, hit record, and you're good to go. You can literally, it's as simple as that. Just download, record, go. It's a free charge, it's free. Now, if you want to buy something, if you want a even better quality, you can use Adobe Audition. It's a pro tool. My producer uses that one. Now here, I'm in New York. I don't have a producer because I don't have a studio. I have this studio that I made, but I don't have a pro studio. If you listen to my first episodes to my recent episodes, you're going to notice the difference in the quality. Because over there, I had a full pro studio. Here, I have the mic and, no foams, no padding, no anything. But if you have a room that you can use, mi amor, baja un chin que se me escucha aquí en la grabación, por favor. No, la televisión. If you have a room that you can use just for your podcast studio, that's going to be a big plus because you can foam it and that's going to cancel all of the noise. As you can see, I don't have a room here to do that. So there's a lot of noise. When I'm recording, it's a shit show. But you can use Adobe Audition, you can use Audacity, you can use foams. The microphone, that should be enough to have a good quality podcast. Now, another one is called Alitu. The podcast maker is literally, it's like a preset podcast maker. This is a web app which you can automate audio cleanup, adding music and publishing to your host, right? So it basically does the process for you. But uploading a podcast episode is not that hard, to be honest. And if you're like me, I like the rawness of podcasts. I like hearing the fuck ups. I like hearing that you're not perfect because you're a person, right? If you sound robotic, if you sound way too perfect, I'm gonna be like, it just takes a little bit of disinterest on me. But not everyone is like that. I understand that. Now, Dare. Now, scripting your show. That's all you need to start your podcast. Basically, Audacity, a microphone, and you're good to go. Everything else is just a plus to make it sound better. But just for starting out, this is all you need. And I'm going to send you the links that that you may buy from to get this equipment at a good price. And the things that you may need. So, scripting your show. I already talked about this, and I showed you earlier. You want to have something similar in every episode so people can start distinguishing you for who you are, for your style, right? So with me, high energy, name of the podcast, what I'm going to tell them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast with a 5-star rating. No, always say that so they know what's up. So it takes ages to write everything on a podcast. Even if you're doing a 20-minute episode, it's gonna take a long time. I wouldn't do that. I don't do that. I'm not gonna tell you, yo, you should write and script your whole podcast episode. Because number one, it's not gonna turn out like you want it. And if you're just reading it, if you're going like, well, today I'm going to be talking micro to macro, small actions lead to big results, have a thesis that serves something in the heart. The Japanese say you have three faces. No, don't do that. Like, you're taking away the emotion of having your podcast. Just have the topic. Remember, I'm all about simplifying this for you. So get the topic, start talking whatever comes to your subconscious and to your conscious. That's what you're gonna say. Don't stress yourself out a lot. Remember, you can always do another episode. You can better. And with time, you are going to better. Your script is going to be, you know, fluent. It's gonna start going how you want it. So, um, uh, yeah. Unless you practice this a lot, like highly produced presenters have, it's really hard to avoid sounding like you're reading. And listening to someone reading out of a script is really, really boring. So don't do that. Actually, I think my last two podcast episodes, I was reading from a book because I'm doing a training right now. And even I got a little bit bored listening to it. Because it's just not the same when you're talking and when you're reading, right? You can put way more emotion. Right now, I'm reading this, what I'm telling you, because it's specific information, it's specific steps that you need to. And even though I have a full script of what to say here, I'm not fully reading it. I read the topic, I go ahead because I know what I'm talking about, right? I am the authority here. So when you are doing your podcast, think about the same thing. When you were in school, do you know that if what the teachers were telling you was true or not? No, you didn't. You just, well, she's a teacher, so she has to be right. It's the same with your episode. You're the teacher. If you could be lying the whole time to your audience, they probably wouldn't know unless they're experts, right? So talking into a mic sounds simple, but it's probably one of the most difficult things to conquer when learning how to start a podcast. You can make this difficult for yourself by imagining that you are either talking to yourself or talking to a microphone. That's when it starts getting boring for you. So instead, focus on talking to a single person. We talked about who your podcast is earlier, who your podcast is for earlier on. Remember what I told you? Always have that person in mind. Because if you're here, right? Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about how to do your own podcast show and you're just like, fuck, I'm with my microphone. There's nobody listening to me. You're gonna get bored. You're not gonna like it. So have someone in mind. If you can invite someone to be in the recording with you and to be silent because we don't want noise, then it's even better because you're not gonna feel alone. It's a process of just getting used to. So when you're creating that persona, it's about how much detail you put into it. Some people go as far as to creating jobs, hobbies, likes, dislikes, family, friends. If you can do that, that is going to be even better. Trust me, it's worth it. Because, again, the more clear you are with who you are making this for, yo, bro, it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off because every episode is going to be like dead center in the eye. You're going to, every time, you're going to hit the target. You're going to hit that feeling that you want to cause in people. Trust me on that. You want to stir emotions inside of them, and you do that when you know who you're talking to. Now, if you like to learn how to become a better speaker, including everything from finding your voice to vocal warm-ups to mic techniques, check out my page. Check out my Circulo de Vida page. I'm a speaker. You can go to my Instagram at Luisitos Live. There's a lot of tips and tricks you can use to modulate your voice. Things you can use to when you are going into a tense moment, you can just lower down your voice or talk a little bit slower. So you can really get that point inside of them and you can make them understand that, hey, this is a serious moment. Or you can just start laughing. What the fuck? Hey, what's going on, people? It's all on your voice modulation, your tone, your volume, your cadence. There's a lot of tips and tricks. If you need tips on speaking, don't be afraid to hit me up. Yeah, there's a lot of techniques. Just remember when you are doing your podcast, you're not speaking to a microphone. If you are filming a video, you are not talking to your camera. A lot of times, if you're blogging, for example, and you're like this, you have your camera in front of you, you're gonna feel weird because you think you're speaking to a camera, but you're not speaking to a camera. You're not speaking to a microphone. There's an actual real person of flesh and blood, just like you, listening on the other side, and you don't know where the fuck they are. So remember that. It's important. It's critical. Now, ways to have guests on your podcast. Right now, we're on a pandemic. It's not everyone is up to show up to your house, your podcast studio, and to do a guest appearance, right? So you can have your guests in another country or regular interviews, right? You can, Wajiha can tell me, hey, Luis, let's do a podcast and we can hop on Zoom. Or we can use Ecamm. That's an app for Mac. Or we can use Skype, Google Audio, Google Video. I don't know how the fuck it's called. But there's a lot of ways that we can do interviews. The thing is that having a guest on your podcast is actually good because you are combining two audiences and creating a single stream. And when you start getting high valued guests, this starts positioning you even more as an authority because of the people who you are getting on your podcast. So yeah, remember that. Have guests on your podcast, and there's a lot of ways to have them. You don't necessarily need to have them physically. So don't feel that you can't do an interview to someone because you don't have them close. Now, part D, or part 4, editing and producing your podcast. Now, I already touched on this a little bit, but this is the part where you edit out mistakes. Stitch together different audio clips, adding music or effects, and make sure it's all sounding great with the equalization, right? Leveling, compression, and more. Probably you're not an audio engineer, so it's okay. You don't need to be. Me, I don't do a lot. I I have a producer, so I send it to him. He edits it out. He puts it sounding good. No, gets he does his magic. I don't even know what he does. I just know he makes it sound better. But if you don't have someone, don't stress it. Just make sure that your audio quality is good. Go to a place where there's no people bothering you. If you can buy the foam pads that I'm going to send you the links at, buy them because that's gonna make it sound even better. No background noise, no anything, and just make sure you have a good clear audio quality. I personally don't care about snitching out the mistakes that I make. If I sneezed, if I forgot something, if I had to go back to a part, I just do it. I let people know. I show people that I'm a regular person doing something, talking about a topic, and people fuck up. So that's okay. So if you're recording with Audacity, you can do separate clips. What I do is that I record my episode. I start my episode right, just talking about what I'm gonna talk. Because when I'm getting ready for an episode, my mind is racing. I'm nervous. I wanna get this message out. I wanna give a clear message. So I just go ahead. When I'm done with it, that I know what I talked about. Because remember, I only have a topic. I don't have any meat on it. I have the topic and my subconscious. Because since it's personal development, it's a lot of things that I read. It's a lot of courses that I take that I pay for, and things like that. So it's the information that I already have inside of me. So I go do the episode, and then on a separate clip, because of course, you can do a lot of clips. I go and make the intro, and then I make the outro, right? And it's actually more organized that way. You wanna if you need extra shots, then get the extra shots. Don't try to make it all in one shot because you're gonna fuck up probably. So um you can contract someone to edit your show. You can find them on Fiverr or anything like that if you want to have that good quality. But just to start out, I would be myself and get the clearer audio possible. So Alitu, again, is a very simple podcast maker. It just gets everything right in front of you. I don't personally use it. I use Audacity because I like, putting my own shit there. My podcast doesn't have music at the moment. I'm working with my producer to create a theme song, because you want something to, again, people learn what your style is and what your flow is. So the music for your podcast can be anything that you like. And it's your show. So there's no rule to saying that your podcast must have music. If it doesn't have, there's no problem. Mine doesn't have. If you have some, then there's no problem either. Like, you can use any music. Um there's a lot of websites that you can legally get music for to use on your podcast. You need to pay a small fee on most of them, but there's royalty free music that's actually available to anybody who just downloads it. So it is possible to find free music for your podcast. You don't need to pay anybody to create a theme song for your show. You just find something that you actually like, and it's gonna work. Just remember that. So um let me royalty free music on YouTube. You're gonna find it. So publishing your podcast, part 5. Now we're wrapping this up. Now we have our podcast running. We have our show running. We have our first episode recording. Now it's time to put it up on a platform. There's a lot of platforms you can put it up. But first, it's important to have your cover art. Just like your episode title, first impressions are everything. Now, just like music, Creative Commons licensing can be found in visual art too. What does this mean? Having something distinguishable. For example, this is my logo, right? This the circle with colors and the blue background. That's my podcast logo. Could be better, definitely, but it's what I got right now. It's what is working for me, and it's what I like. So you can create your cover on Canva. I created this one on Canva. Or you can hire a freelancer on Fiverr and he can do something nice like create a logo for you, put your face on there, anything you like. And they're not that expensive really, but having a distinguishable cover art is essential. Remember this. That's the first thing and only thing people are going to see when they're listening to your podcast because it shows like on the screen, right? So get a good picture, get a cover art, get something distinguishable that people can actually learn and see and say, okay, yeah, this is this dude. So on the guide, there's gonna be some measures that your cover art needs to be. Is 1400 by 1400 pixels or 1400 píxeles por 1400 píxeles on JPEG or PNG. So now, choosing your podcast hosting. This is something that I didn't know when I was going to start my podcast. I just thought, well, I record it and I put it in the social platforms. But when when it comes to getting your podcast out there, you need to have something called an RSS feed. It's basically your host for uploading the podcast to the different platforms. So you'll need a hosting account. Sometimes it's called a media host, or um yeah, podcast hosts are services that store your audio and allow your listeners to listen. So it's basically the intermediary between you and the all the platforms. A good thing is that the host allow you to upload your episodes to various different um platforms at the same time. For example, when I upload an episode, I don't have to go and upload it to Apple, to Google, to YouTube, to Sounder, to SoundCloud. It just upload it to the RSS feed and it distributes it. So that's a very good thing about the hosting services. Now, take note of this because this is kind of important. Because you need an RSS feed to have your podcast. So there's some paid ones. Of course, the paid ones are better. And there's three top RSS feeds that you can use. One is Buzzsprout. I'm gonna put it in the chat for you guys. Buzzsprout. And again, I'm going to send you this link. If you want to post this on YouTube, what would be the procedure? Well, if I want to post this product, for example, this recording, I would just take the recording and upload it to YouTube as normally. If I want to upload the podcast to YouTube and I just recorded the podcast, then I would make a cover art, edit the audio, and upload it to YouTube, like if it were a normal video. So it's just a normal upload. And uploading to YouTube is actually very easy because you just go to the app. You need to have a creator account. You create your account, upload the video, and it's up there. You put your taglines, you put your description, and that's it. It's not that hard at all. If you need help with that, you can of course text me. I will help you out with that too. So these three hosts are the best ones for hosting your podcast. And the other one is Transistor. Wajiha, you're unmuted. Do you have a question? So these three hosts that I just sent you. They're paid. So Buzzsprout is the cheapest good option. It's $12 a month. It's not that expensive to be honest. But at first your podcast is not gonna be creating revenue. So it's up to you if you have the capital to invest that into your show. If you can, obviously it's going to be even better. But Captivate is for multiple shows and growth features. So it's gonna give you a growth boost. I don't use it. I don't use any of these hosts. But that's $19 a month. And Transistor is the best for private podcast feeds. That's $19 a month. That's if you have a private show, like if you have a private community. then that's good. But now there's some free options too. I use Sounder FM, and I'm going to send you the link. Where is it? Sounder FM, Sounder FM. Because yeah, of course, I don't, I'm not gonna pay for it, you know. So this is the link of the host that I use, and you can just go in there and create an account. It's actually very good. It's free. It's easy to use, and it gives you access to allow to multiple platforms at the same time. Not bad at all. So that's all you need for creating the RSS feed. It's very simple actually. You just, it's like creating a normal account. You put your podcast episode, add your podcast name, I mean, and your info. Then after that, you can just upload your episodes. That's the only thing you need to know about the RSS feed. Now, once you've created your show inside your media host of choice, you can then submit it to various directories. This is something that I am yet to do because listeners can discover, subscribe to, and download your podcast. Any good host, all three that I listed, we have a decent set of auto submit or guided guided submission tools. But the one I have doesn't have it. So um you need to go and submit your podcast to the different platforms. So you have to go to Apple Podcasts and look Apple Podcasts for creators, and then you go submit your podcast. It'll ask you for your RSS feed link. You just put it in there, and after like 24 hours, your podcast is up and running. You'll do the same for the other platforms. The same for Spotify. The same for Google Podcast, and any other platforms that you want. You just go to the platform, look for creators, and you submit it. They're not gonna deny you. If you had your RSS feed, you got it there. After you're there, there's already a listeners base on there. So your podcast is gonna start getting traction. Of course, if on Apple Podcasts, don't expect to have 1 million listeners the first month because there's a big fan base already on there. So you gotta get discovered. You gotta be consistent. My advice to you is when you first um start your podcast, do a lot of podcasts. Like do a lot of podcasts. And family, finally, ay coño. That's all for creating your podcast. We've went from creating your idea, creating your persona, to building your art, to building your episodes, to knowing what time frame, what length, what format you can use, the different types of podcasts that you can actually run, how to publish it, and how to submit your podcast to the different platforms: Apple Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, everything on that. So, any questions, any doubts, something you like, something you learned? Was this information helpful? That's the most important thing. Did you get value out of this training? Are you ready to do your podcast? What else do you need?
Ready, bro, ready, ready. Thank you, papá. Muchas gracias, hombre.
Estamos ahí, bro.
Buenísimo, bro. Muchas gracias, man.
Claro, claro. So,
Thank
ya
you.
sabes, de hecho, tú no estás en mi chat de WhatsApp.
No.
Te voy a enviar el link para que puedas unirte. Cualquier pregunta que tú tengas, me la zumbas por ahí o me lo zumbas en privado y va a estar mi número también.
Dale.
Para que comiencen esto. Quiero ver sus podcasts, quiero ver que están haciendo algo. You know, I want you doing something, man.
Yes.
Well, Jiha, I'm happy that it was helpful. This upload, I'm going to upload it to YouTube too, so you can watch it again, take better notes, because I know I was going a little bit fast, but my voice was wearing out. It was a long episode. But yeah, that's all I got. I hope that you can actually go and create your podcast now. You literally have all the steps you need. This is the process. Again, make it simple for yourself. Don't overcomplicate it. Start and don't stop. That's the best advice that I can give you. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. Just start, do an episode, do another one, and please don't make my mistake. Just because you don't get feedback on your episodes doesn't mean people aren't listening to you. And it doesn't mean that you are not having an impact on people's lives. So you just keep doing your episodes and don't stop. Don't stop. Trust me, someone is listening to you. Even if it's just one person, if you're giving value to them, you are giving value to them. And you don't know how far that can go and what impact difference you can make in someone's life. So just focus on the next episode. If you did one today, focus on the one you're gonna do the next week. Don't think like, oh, this was a great episode. I loved it. It's done. What am I going to do for the next one? That's what we want here. That's the consistency. And trust me, trust me, trust me, trust me. This is a business. We start out like this, creating something in our home, in our garage, wherever it is. But this can be really, really, really big. As big as radio. And y'all know how influential radio is. Podcasts are on cars now. Apple Podcasts are coming as a feature on almost every car now. Google Podcast too. This is big. This is very, very big. So keep on grinding, keep on working on this, and don't give up. Because how are you recording your video right? What? Am I recording my video? You mean what, yeah? Yeah. I'm recording this. I'm going to upload this to YouTube. So yeah, just do it. Don't stop. That's the advice that I have for you guys. Soon Zoom has that feature, what, yeah? The recording feature. It records it directly to your computer. Yes. So family, that's all for today. That's all for today. My voice is worn out. I gotta go and take an hour of silence now. But hope you have a great day. Hope you found value on this. And family, I'll see you on the next adventure. This is Luis Martinez, founder of El Círculo de Vida. And that's all for today, fam. Love you.